So, Mr. Hayes?
Yep. Okay, let's go back. So actually, we're going to segue right into and actually picking. We've identified the 3 projects. So I'm going to have to rely on you to work on that part. And the goal is to maybe basically create a pathway to kickstart those projects off, right? And then what else? Maybe what are resources we need to do that? And some of that's a lot of it's what we've already discussed. So we're just going to start putting those together in a plan. And then if you've actually written other stuff on the cards, the goal is we'll just basically compile all this information. We're looking for you to give us direction on some of these things as well, and then we'll come back with a full report to say, here's plan A, B, and C, right? And then where we think we need to take it to from that level. So from the first one, we start, which is networking.
Yeah, the networking community, knowing who's around, by far was in first place.
Okay. So that being said, what's the first thing we need to do to start a networking process? Sign the email list. Thank you very much. There you go. And put your name and phone number and email on the cards just as well. So what's the next thing? What's the word mean? Networking.
I don't think we've, these 2 meetings have been really helpful. We've met people we didn't know before and found out about projects and things that are happening that we didn't know were happening, some of those resources. But we've not really had a venue or a forum where people can talk about what they're doing, and we can get into some of those other details and then see where we have those commonalities. And
so we'd have a networking meeting. There you go. Okay. A networking meeting to discuss priorities. What else would we discuss?
Take a survey of people's skills and who we can put to work in the best.
Capabilities and
Skills. Okay.
capabilities and capacity.
Are we getting all this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes.
Well, you're talking about unifying regional committees for every one of these.
So a regionalization or what we can, okay. Okay. We were on fire there for a second. I had flies flying everywhere, yes.
All assignments, return, report on the assignments every month consistently.
Okay, so that's an action item of the groups will be to follow up baby step assignments to get this thing moving. Okay, so we want to go, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to have some focus, we're going to identify our goals, we're going to identify maybe some other action plans out of that. What else are we going to talk about? We have a skills inventory.
I think,
And
too, that would be the appropriate place that Melena and I could divulge all the things we accidentally ran into.
Okay, so
Numbers, nonprofits, whatever.
So we're gonna have a more of a FAQs type scenario of different things that have what to do and not to do. Some ideas of examples of experiences. What else in networking? Would we introduce ourselves? Okay.
No.
So right, we're just gonna sit there with our arms crossed and say, yes, sir.
What about each agency or whoever gets involved in this network, give a list to the other the people involved with what they have to offer?
Wonderful, a profile, right? Right. So maybe they would provide it like a one-pager profile, a biography, so we can, everybody would have it so we can compile it.
I know what he's doing and she's doing.
Elaine's she's gonna have 20-year career history going on with this thing. So yeah, so we have a bio, so you can visually see it. Also, you can take it home so you can remember to reference it and share it with you, right? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Sharing resources. What are we doing? Are we going to hold those tight? We don't want to share our resources. We want to keep our people close to the vest so nobody else knows what's going on, right? No, we want to say, who are we accessing? You know, could maybe that regional thing maybe approach where everybody can participate. Maybe somebody's been doing it, so we want to use you as the lead, but we all follow behind. Right? Ducks in a row, sort of things. What else? We're talking together. We're sharing things together. Issues. Talk about issues. Complain.
I think that's where you identify your needs and challenges also.
Okay.
Because then we can understand the gaps.
Okay. So there's a term for that. Has anybody ever heard of a SWOT analysis? Well, I hear GAP, I think governmental accounting standards. So yeah, I'm thinking and threats. So kind of what you guys did at the last session, what Carolee led, was a SWOT analysis, which led to this, right? So now you can do the same type of exercise. The interesting thing about it is all of a sudden everybody starts sharing, well, that's my idea. I had the same thought, right? You put it all up there, so all these individual thoughts become unified because it's it's like, yeah, I don't disagree with that, right? So you become a SWOT analysis, you start identifying. We took different things and narrowed it down to 3 categories. And nobody had objections, right? In fact, we're adding value to it. That's the benefit of a SWOT analysis. So that would be something you may want to do as an exercise to identify all those strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. What's a big threat? Finances. I always throw personalities in there because that's always seems to be a problem. You know, but yeah,
Oh, goodness,
go ahead. Perceptions.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like you were talking about, federal oversight. That's a huge problem.
It's just, but that's a perception's reality if it's there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm in agreement with Milena, except the perception is that the pie is this big.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we're all competing for this little, right? We all want our sliver of the pie and we want it bigger, but what we don't understand is when we collaborate and you work regionally, the pie grows.
Right.
Everybody seems to get focused on, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to give up
Something,
my little
right.
slice already.
Yeah.
right?
And others
That
maybe at least
perception.
you also everybody's getting a piece of the pie, right? So
Absolutely.
you think,
Yes.
yes, sir.
Perception that it's 100% government restrictions.
Good
Might
point.
only be 90, but yeah.
And have I bit anybody yet so far? I haven't bitten anybody or kicked anybody or I chastised a few people. But anyway, but government's not that bad. Reality, sometimes it's more fearful. I've been doing this for 30 years, on both sides of the fence, right? And I have rarely run into anything that's been so bad that anybody couldn't tolerate. It's the perception of somebody. The fear of that, oh my God, they're going to come on our property, but you're getting a wind tunnel that's going to benefit you for your next thing. What's the inspection? You can have an inspection every 3 years maybe to come out and make sure it's there. Wouldn't you assume that you would not want government resources being dismantled and moved somewhere else? Or that it's being used for some other illicit purposes? I had an REO property, a foreclosure house, and I was doing some stuff down in Indio. And we had a very entrepreneurial lady who had taken over one of our properties and become a brothel. For lack of a better word. And we're like, well, do we highlight this as an entrepreneurial spirit if somebody's doing it? Or do we call the police and bring her in, but she was actually literally, she'd broke the glass. Right. She broke the glass, got in the house, and was out there in the front yard sweeping up the glass and cleaning up the property, right? So, but it just happened to be one of our staff were driving by and saw that, like, well, why is this lady maintaining our house, and called, but, we'd moved her from one house and she kicked it out and went to the other house. But, so those type of things, there are some compliances to make sure that your money's being used for the purpose it's supposed to be used for, right? So, and that's fair, right? Same people usually complain about that process are the ones fearful of doing that. But any other threats?
I think that is this next step meeting would be the point that we'd like to consolidate these lists, these forbidden lists. Like St. John's has a list, but we're not even sure if it's legal.
Right.
Restricting them. And let's bring those lists that at this point are your guiding documents, your
Right.
organic documents. Because let's see if they just need to be updated or if they're just a fallacy.
Well, and the reality is a transition. So it's a threat today. Tomorrow it's an opportunity because you're able to fix it, right? You can either fix it because it's not really true, or you can find out the supervisor maybe have the ability and his partners up here to change something that may be a technical glitch in a system that people didn't understand, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, as simple as it was with Mojave County, I'm trying to think of Eric Marcus's group. I can't even pronounce the acronym on it, but they have a food advocacy group that participates, and they went into Yavapai County, Mojave County, and another county, Coconino, and said, listen, this issue of food going to waste in your own community because people don't understand the rules, and because the health standards were said this, but didn't really make sense and weren't applicable to their area, but they adopted somebody else's health standards, right? So they went in and made those changes, and now in all 3 counties, they're able actually to provide local foods to restaurants and everything, as long as they followed guiding principles of what they call a GIP gap, the good practices of food handling. You didn't have to go through the course, but you had to go through a basic training module to say you knew and understand it and sign off on it. So then you were essentially, like you were saying, the USDA certified, same principle. You're just basically saying, listen, I've been instructed to be good handling practices in my food safety. And that gets you in the door to provide food to food banks, to restaurants, and everything else. Is there I know we've talked about local foods going down there. What are the resources to do that? Is everybody that works has their own backyard farm? How many are there? Okay. How do you perceive yourself? Are you a hobbyist or are you an entrepreneur?
No, I'm a farmer.
Okay. So you are a job creator. You have a job, career, right?
And it's one of the things that I want to bring up because, you know, we're talking a lot about the nonprofits in the community, but I got news for you guys. If we don't make jobs, and we don't make businesses, and we don't produce food, there ain't nothing for you to give and nothing for you to hand out.
Right. Thank you very much. So, and that's a great point because every town has to be balanced, right? It has to have social services, it has to have industries, it has to be, and agriculture is a staple through many of them, right? So this is all a segue. If you also creating a market for actual full-time producers or part-time producers, right? So you have to sometimes change your venue of what you're looking for. And we look at it from a business side. We have a business development grant, right? And we support farmers markets. Farmers market is an enterprise, but every one of those vendors is a business. You know, some people just think, well, they're just local producers and they're doing this thing, and it's their great, and it's their hobby or whatever. They employ themselves. They probably employ a few other people, right? So every one of that, and that's how you can sometimes rethink about how what your food chain is and your local economy is. Because if you start creating more small vendors and some people doing good practices with food handling, you start the farmer's market, but you're also bringing other people in. We actually funded 3 different farmers markets last year to support, and some of them were really strong. Prescott Farmers Market, well, Springerville left. They got theirs kick-started. But one of the things was they were so strong, but the average smaller group, or even growers, didn't really farmers markets all the time. You know, it became laborious. Right, so it's a profit return, but they still had the produce to get rid of, right? So Prescott and one other group actually is doing it, is they're trying to create a holistic place center to create that business enterprise, to bring the farmer's market to one central location that can be manned 4 days or 5 days a week, right? So that the individual vendors don't have to necessarily staff it all the time. You just go to a grocery store. Just if you've been to a small thrift store, indoor mall, where everything's labeled with different tags, and when you check out, green goes to this person, red goes to that person, that. Same principle, right? So those are different enterprises. One, it's a business in town. You've got an outlet, but you have now a new energy within your community that wasn't there before. And it could be a social enterprise if it's run by a nonprofit, right? So there's just different ways of thinking local businesses. But that's just one more set of jobs, one more venue for people, and may inspire other people to participate in that process. So these things become the opportunities that we work with. I don't want to belabor all this. So we've got the networking, the resources. What resources do we need to bring to this activity? You guys? Am I losing you, or am I just talking too fast? Okay. Thank you. Okay, right. So what are we doing? What resources do we need? People, place to meet, convenient, the networking methods, maybe some technology, some venues to channel this information through, whatever. What else? Huh? Communication, open conversation. Yeah, I hope we don't all just show up and be quiet. Somebody that maybe lead it, facilitate it. Okay. Who would that be? Who's going to do that? Him? Say yes or no? Oh, he's gone. He said he walked out the door. So, okay. So, but you need somebody to be, go ahead. He brought that up. Good place.
I have 2 huge meeting rooms in either Concho or here.
Okay. You just got the secured right there. Okay. Resources there. What else? Snacks, water. I mean, these are little baby things. But what else? In the big picture, if you're networking, you're identifying your mission. You're doing anything like that. What's your going to be next step? Is it just we're walking away? We're going to set up subcommittees, action plan.
So those priorities, you can't have those action plans until you.
So we've done the SWOT analysis.
Right.
Then we prioritize those. Thank you. So we're taking those things and now creating the priorities. Because again, we're talking about networking. This is a global effort, right? Are we going to be? We want to talk about other things. It may not be all necessarily food related, right? So it's creating that communication synergy within the region. So again, we've got to keep our focus. So maybe it is we want to prioritize what those things are, and then break them up into subgroups, and then have some sub leaders to do that, to follow up with meetings maybe the task list. Don't just look at me here. I'm trying to spur up ideas here. What else would we do? What's your vision on that? Pardon?
You have to have that leader
Okay.
that is going to be the champion of this cause.
Okay.
So I believe you have to have leadership, but I don't know that it falls to one person. And the reason I say that is because, as I mentioned earlier, those grassroots efforts really become the most powerful, right? Yeah. And if you're gonna talk about a broad region, you wanna make sure that you've got good representation and good champions from all of those little areas within that region. So you might want a leadership committee, so to speak. But if you rely upon one person, I think that ebbs and flows with personalities. Is my point on it.
Right. I mean, I could have ticked off half of you guys. That's why you're not talking, and that's why you're not going to come back, or even going to do right. See, so I mean, but it does. And here's the thing: how many people think it's the county's job to take this thing on? Oh, thank goodness. Okay, good. All right, right. Everybody been through Blythe? Okay. Do you see it as a thriving town? Right, you just see the kind of clutter you drive through. I've worked extensively with that group and brought in communities, and we got all this energy going, but to talk about rebranding them and getting them in because they see themselves as this pit stop with people driving by. They have the second highest volume of traffic in one area going into California, right? They miss all of it. They're not capturing it economically, tourism, or anything else. And when it was wise, because you drive by and you look and see it's not Blight or Blythe, you know, you can't already distinguish between the two. And so we did a whole networking thing. It's got everybody involved. They had this great vision of how to change it. And what did they do? It's the city's problem now. We've done our work, and it's now the city's job to implement it. City manager says, it's not my job, and the whole thing died. Because, you know, all the work, and here's the case where churches were involved, people with leadership of all different faiths and people were willing to do it and stand up. It was as simple as going out and cleaning the entrances up to off the freeway to look a little bit less trashy, right? And thank God nobody's from here so I can say these things, but anyway, but that's simple things. But they turned it over and expected the city government to do, who was running, barely surviving without going bankrupt, right? So they had no resources to implement it, and that's immediately will kill it because you're not taking ownership of it. So having it driven by the communities is going to be an essential key component. But you do need that backup. It can't be just one person because that one person could alienate people one day or be in a bad mood the next time. But you need people to rotate that through so that everybody's sharing it. I would guess, maybe I'm wrong, but it's the church groups around here probably the strongest networking group around to bring people? No? Okay. Who would be the strongest networking groups to bring in that have community action teams? Nobody. Okay, well we're starting from scratch. That's okay. You know, so that's good. I mean, that's fine. Then you're going to have to create those things, and that's going back to identifying your purposes and starting to align those people to bring your teams into play. Finding your mission group and your followers for those things. Right? I just lost everybody there. Like, oh, this is exhausting. Okay.
That's why that's number one. There is no network.
Yeah. Okay.
The purpose of this group is to create that.
Great. Okay. So we are a clean slate, and we're working on.
Well, and here's the thing, just, you know, for as many years as I worked with the county and doing grants, is I field phone calls every day of people with great ideas. And I've said that before, but I can't be that person that says, you need to go talk to this group, and you need to go talk to this group. You know, that's why this is so important. So the next one is, instead of getting all those phone calls, we meet centralized, and everybody throws those great ideas out, and we start developing these teams, you know, because, and I've had groups come to me with wonderful ideas, but then there's no momentum behind it.
Right.
I can't do that for you. Doyle can't do that for you. You know, your idea is great, but we need you guys to be the catalyst. So, you know, the next meeting, I think that's really what we're looking at, is how are we gonna push those projects?
Right. And good point. And so when we're doing this, also keep in mind, we talked about the baby steps. We don't need to swing for the fences, right? We're not going to have a massive collection of people showing up. You're going to find short-term successes to build off and build momentum, because otherwise you're going to lose interest. So think of short-term, long-term medium range, things that can be done so that you're not overwhelming people, but also just should you get your feet on the ground and get some success working.
And these guys were talking about their refrigeration. Okay, so you've got the refrigeration. So the need that they've got and the projects we've got to work on there is how do we generate a revenue stream to keep them on their feet so they can go to the next goal?
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
Which is a great segue to the next one, and we'll do that. Okay, so, but yeah, so that, but anything on the network, and I mean, this is, it's global. It's gonna be a very vast thing, so that's gonna be important for you guys to keep in mind, to say, this isn't, everybody's gonna come in with their wish list for their specific thing, because that's what they're passionate about. And that's great, but that may need to be fit under either a smaller subgroup or tied into another effort here. Okay, so but it's the networking is the nexus here. It's the thing you're trying to do to bring things in. Yes.
So, David mentioned, and went back to mission, vision, all of that sort of thing in this group, and it's an important component, it really is, but like you said, everybody's here for kind of a different reason. But there's not a doubt in my mind that everybody here isn't always also here, because really what they have a desire to do is advance the common good, right? Everybody has an interest in doing good things, and whether that's good things for veterans, or whether that's good things for the people in your nursing home, or the good things on the food banks, or whatever that is. So I think it is important to identify some of that moving forward, and that we might all come at it from a different perspective, but that's.
And that's a great point, because it's the network, the goal is networking. So the messages, there may be 100 different messages going to that network, right? So the goal is maybe looking at how you're creating that messaging network and collaboration network to create systems, right? I mean, I'm trying to forecast, because that's probably what you're going to have to evolve through, but you've got to think back. It's, yes, I'm a food bank person, I'm a farmer, social services, whatever. It's the fact is you're trying to create the network to collaboration and thinking of those venues and what those things are to bring people in to find a common energy to spread the information. So that's the method, the activity, right? And each of you may have different subgroups of messages, and you may work that out and say, we want to just focus on 3 things. That's great. And that may be part of the next 2 things we talk about, but it's not necessarily get lost in the weeds about our specific personal mission stuff. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's transition to that. So the next one, my secretary's gone here, was the local ag production. Across the board. Working, now we're talking about the networking. So what do we have in local ag production? Ag production. I'm just throwing ag production globally, from vegetables to animals. Cattle. Okay. How many do our cattle been work together? Okay. So there's again. Okay. So that may be maybe that's a great SWAT thing to go through with others too. Okay. So why don't they work together?
Wrestling probably comes to mind.
Wrestling or rustling? Wrestling. Okay. Okay. So okay. Wrestling of ideas, wrestling of herds, wrestling of.
Well, there's.
No. Yes, I know.
There's a lot of 100-year-old animosity.
Okay.
Between
Okay.
I mean, historical
Right.
issues.
Okay.
That drive today.
Okay.
Not only that, though, a lot of our cattle growers have full-time jobs in addition to their
Right.
job.
Okay. So this is.
We're talking about just time
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Okay.
And grazing rights.
Okay. So there's issues around the production and growth. Okay. So there's that. So let's just kind of put all these things up on. What other things we have? We talked about chickens. I mean, I'm just trying to put this.
In Apache County, we don't really do commodity farming anymore.
Okay.
Nobody really produces on a large scale,
Right.
with the exception of maybe beef, right? And we know Arizona grown beef doesn't stay in Arizona. We
It
all know
goes-
that.
yeah.
It just does not, right? So we haven't really created a local market for that. And I would blame that on policy more than anything, right? We don't really know what people are producing.
Okay.
That's, I think, the biggest thing, is that it's small pockets of production. Nobody knows what that looks like on the bigger picture.
Okay.
You're talking about like the local level cattle production.
level,
Just
cattle
what's-
or any kind of growing, right?
And I know where she's,
I think that's fair.
yeah, and the policy part too, that we've seen, Melena and I and Mr. Weller, when we were like at X Diamond and then Del Hall and others that just came to him, and then myself and Melena. So you got a school system that's buying beef, and we have local beef producers who are sending the beef out of the Round Valley and Apache County, and a school system buying beef from outside of the county too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
And policy comes down to a big part of that.
okay, so good question.
Well, there are a couple of issues, you know, it takes over 100 acres of land here to produce one cow-calf unit. You know, that means, you know, you're running 32,000 acres and you have 200, it's authorized for 210 head of cattle, you know, support 210 head of cattle. And then a lot of them are sending the cattle out into Deming and farther. I've heard local ranchers talk about shipping to Texas for the auctions and things, because they get a better price out of state than they get in state. The closest auction is in Holbrook, and, you know, it's relatively small as far as cattle auctions go. It's a small venue. So they're not getting the price that you get nationally. If you look up the USDA sales statistics, which is easy to access online, you know, they're not getting as much money here. It makes more sense to ship to Deming. You know, there's an issue with, we would need to market to get the big buyers into a local sale. You know, that would have to, you know.
So,
But I don't know if we're talking about getting to big buyers. We're talking about creating local demand
Well,
and being able to get into
Right.
that local demand.
so in that,
the local demand need to generate the same price per pound
sure,
or better.
or the equivalent cost, net worth, net cost.
As a you know, if you did it as a boutique sale kind of thing, oh, it's grass-fed, it should be bringing in 30% more. You know, those kinds of things, or it's all organic, you know, it should be bringing in 70% more than the $1.40 a pound you get, you know, at the auction right now. Those are things that actually have to be considered.
Yeah. So go ahead, there's a question.
One of the things, and this goes back to something you brought up before with social enterprise, is right now, those who are growing cattle in Apache County are acting individually, they're marketing individually, they're trying to get the best price. What they need is a way to come together, for example, as a cooperative, where their beef can be processed locally and sold, marketed locally to our local schools, to Summit Hospital, to the prison,
Casinos.
to the grocery stores, so that it doesn't have to be shipped out of state and shipped back in. Because if they do that, for example, through a cooperative, they can sell to these intermediate marketers at a higher price than what they're getting now when they're shipping it out of state, and yet the intermediate marketers are still paying less than what they would pay buying from someplace like US Foods.
Right. So there's a great example of this. This is what happened was in Prescott area. There's the three farmers markets, Prescott, Sedona, and Flagstaff. They have, I call them truck farms, but small vendors participating in all the different things. And there's a network of them. They're all doing this. They're actually selling stuff off-season to Phoenix folks and then buying produce and bringing it up to the off-season there, right? So there's a little bit of commodity going on. They call it a food hub. Have you ever heard of a food hub? Okay. One person, thank you. Okay, at least validate. So the food hub, we have a master of food hubs right over here, right? So yes, oh yes, there's our, I recognize that sort of, if I can see that far. But no, but food hubs basically is the exchange of food products locally, and we're filling those niches there. And one of the things we've identified, is this group did, was that, you know, we're like, well, we want to get into those local markets. We want to get it. We have all these restaurants in town and stuff like that. We want to get in all this stuff, but nobody knows how to ask the questions, right? So they're like, well, we can't produce this because tomorrow they need that. Well, no, but you produce. If you ask the questions of what they consistently are using at the local restaurants or at the schools or all the different vendors, you essentially create a marketing demand, right? And then you start going back to your people to do it. But they had nobody to connect these dots. So they came to us, and we actually well, they went to another US agency actually and funded this study to go out and hire a person to be their marketer, to break those things down, knock on those doors, connect the dots, to figure out a plan of what those commodities were going to, what the supply and demand could be done, so then they could go back and connect those dots. So, yes.
Is anybody familiar with the lavender farm in Concho? You realize that over a course of a weekend, they get 14,000 people through to look at their farm and buy their farm products? No, I'm not kidding. 14,000 people through in one weekend.
Every weekend or?
Just one weekend. They do one weekend in May.
That's the annual thing.
But their
Yeah, okay.
annual thing. But they're also doing some other things to bring people in on a more regular basis. They put a wine tasting room and that kind of stuff. You know, Mike's very successful at what he is doing. And that's the kind of, you know, he's already built a platform and all that kind of stuff to start building off of agritourism here. I mean, people are coming from literally all over the world to go to his lavender festival.
Well, so let me pause for a second for the. I'm gonna. That's all right. No. So I'm gonna throw this to Carolee one as an example of how they put theirs together for Southern County, so she can put her other hat on. But then I want to carry it back to how we do this, because these are great. These are the things that we should be having in a conversation for the follow-up meeting, right? Because these are examples and things like. But to put it all together, I'm going to turn this to Carolee to have her sell her Southern Gila County IDA thing, or not the IDA, but sorry.
Can she come up, stand up?
I'm so
Sure.
sorry. Okay.
Hold on.
So when we talk about ag in Apache County, there's some things we don't know, and there's things we need to know. We don't know how much production actually happens. Okay, we don't know how much production actually happens. We need to know that. Okay, we need to know what local demand looks like and what our opportunities for local demand are. And yes, that includes school districts, hospitals, senior citizen centers, restaurants, all of those things. We don't know what that demand looks like either. We also don't know what the barriers are to that, right? We have no idea what the local school district would say if we went to the St. John School District and said, okay, we want to get you local beef, right? Let alone we want to supply you with lettuce and tomatoes and whatever that is. So we have some groundwork to do, and we need to be able to figure those things out. So the Globe Miami Superior area crossed county lines there, jurisdictional lines, and applied to USDA to do a food hub study. Food hubs are all about aggregation. It does mean that people have to work together so that they meet a higher demand, because the hospital is not going to commit to buying local food if there can't be a commitment to be able to meet the demand, right? The last thing you want to do is be left hanging and not have adequate food. So there's those two things there. To do a food hub study in Apache County would be extremely helpful. And there is a person here that can tell us how to get to that money to do that study. Just saying. No, I'm not pointing at Doyle. No, I'm not. I'm pointing at you. Because there are some things we just don't know, right? And we need to have those conversations, not just with additional producers or potential producers, but we need to have those conversations with consumers and those who are buying that. More importantly, we need to create a local food economy. Okay, that's really what that's about. And that's for various reasons. That's for nutrition and health, but that's also because, as Jeff mentioned, every producer, I don't care if you're producing in a 20 square foot garden box or if you're producing on 40 acres, it doesn't matter. Maybe you're running beef and it's a lot more than that. Each one of you is a producer and each one of you is a business. Okay, so if we're simply supplementing incomes, that's wonderful. If we're actually sustaining, right, several people and small businesses, small corporations, that's wonderful too. But we don't know what we don't know, and that's what a food hub study could do for us. Did I do what I was supposed to do?
Wonderful,
Okay.
wonderful. So, and that's segue, but see, there's an example of what they did. It took a third-party independent group to do it, but they went out there, so they weren't necessarily crossing boundaries or stepping on toes or somebody's going to make a profit off of this thing. Okay, it was, and I would suggest this, whether it be the county or an organization with here, because this grant that's coming up is actually going to be announced pretty soon. And I'm not trying to market that, but this is a great, if there's an opportunity to do something like that and there's an interest, then I would suggest maybe that's an early win to try to apply, whether it be the county or a certain organization to apply for, to look at that, and assess that. First off, you guys, we talked about your thing being a persistent poverty county, so there's resources for that, some priority points and things like that. But food is one of also our priorities. So there's a will. We'll be certainly happy to help you frame that out and explain it, and probably Carolee will help offer some technical stuff. But it's a stepping stone to build off that information, to pull all this stuff that's all the independent people, and you pull all the information in to create a plan. And they don't all have to agree on it. It's just getting that information to say this thing. But if you do that, then it can segue into some entrepreneur thing, because you're going to identify holes. You're going to identify that, well, we don't have enough beef to supply it, but we can do half of it. But then if you're marketing half, at least you got half of your stuff, all of your stuff may be going to support half of the demand. But at least it's a local market, right? Right. So, and if you're not, then there's maybe a need to say, well, we need to step it up, or we can partner with some other group to do it. But if this, especially on the local produce stuff and with the schools and things, God, that's an easy sell, right? You're talking about getting the kids, participate, even getting the kids involved. Those are all levels, but you're essentially identifying that supply and demand, and you're hopefully figuring out what the demand is. Yes.
There's another issue, even in our local area, is that, they've taken home economics and things out of the schools. Literally, young people and people on food assistance don't know how to cook from scratch. They don't know how to take fresh vegetables and make a meal out of it. They don't know how to take unprocessed beef and turn it into, a hot roast dinner.
Yeah.
Something reasonable. And so, we need to actually institute in our local communities workshops for how you prepare a meal.
Right.
That's where cooperative extension.
And those are your partners to bring in. We're answering all the questions we just bring up. These are all the things that you need to bring to the table to start identifying, to say, okay, here's a plan. And not everybody's going to focus on it. It's going to be some groups that will be interested in doing that. I'll get you in a second. But it may be just 2 or 3 people with that mission, but it is a goal, because that is prevalent everywhere. It's surprising, because you just think everybody should know how to do this. Like, no. But they also don't necessarily know how to use other vegetables that they may be getting to supplement foods that they like. What's bok choy? Or what these things. There's a lot of produce stuff that comes off a surplus, and people don't know how to use it, right? So, did everybody start inventing potatoes, putting things in there? No. Did they put, for beans, a staple that everybody said, "Ooh, wow, I want all these beans in my food"? No, these are staples that people may do because that's what they had to survive on, right? So it's sometimes they've grown culturally because people accepted them, but nobody did because they didn't take that first taste and learn how to process it to make it a palatable process. Go ahead.
You can spend 10 minutes making Kraft macaroni and cheese, but it really only takes about 10 minutes to make it from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have maybe having the commodities already in place to do that. So, real quick.
There's a program going on down at Solo Library. If anybody's seen it, if you haven't, that's right along those lines and could be duplicated very easily. It's called Adulting 101. And it's for teenagers, and it's doing basic skills like basic cooking, budgeting, balancing a checkbook, a whole range of things to help prepare them for being an adult.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, well, my name is Minnie, and I'm with Cooperative Extension, so it's University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. We also do nutrition education, physical education, and one of the things that we do, because a lot of generations now don't cook from scratch, is actually going back. And one of the things that we have found is that if they don't know what it is, I was astonished to find how many people did not know what a sweet beet, what? They just had no idea. But we are actually a resource. We do have.
So we've identified a partner here to come in to fill that void. Real quick, one more question.
So my name's Tony Tangelos. I'm building an organic agri-hood in the White Mountain Lakes area. 2 things. One, I saw on David's flyer that there's an economic development summit in 2 weeks at, in Snowflake, so I imagine, I saw a bunch of flyers there, I imagine you wanted to get that information out to everybody. And, I'm here with Kent Brewer, who has Jubilee Gardener Supply, and we want to really take the baby steps to get greenhouses on as many people's individual homes as possible. And one of the obstacles is financing the greenhouse. So I'm working with Kent, who has very nice Zimmerman greenhouses that are a fraction of the cost of, you said a 36 by 60s under $5,000 for a 36 by 60 greenhouse? 30 by 72. Real rugged. And we're willing to provide interest-free financing for the 75% that the USDA will subsidize ahead of time, so that money can go to buy the greenhouse, get it put on, and then the subsidy then comes to us to repay us interest-free for that financing. So we're going to put together a flyer for that and try to see if we can hand that out at that economic development summit. And our cards are both on the table back there for Jubilee Gardener Supply and my group back there. If anyone's interested, send me an email and I'll send you the flyer.
And that's a great example of some different opportunities. And I'm going to plug in for what we do a little bit. But we've talked about a couple of things. So you've got the local gardeners opportunities to grow that market. In sorry to pun, but it's like getting more people vested in doing this, right? Because if you don't, eventually it's gentrifying out. People are they're aging out, and you're not getting people in there. But if they see it as, if you identify through the food study that there's a gap in the demand and potentially a marketplace for this thing, and that's the next step, by the way, that Gila County is doing, is that they're now looking for a marketplace to start bringing these vendors in to sell the stuff. There's resources to frame these things that is available from us and other resources to do other groups, but we can set up a loan fund that would cover something like that if a nonprofit's willing to do that, right? To cover those. If you've got a great, that's perfect. But those type of things, sometimes with like a farmer's market, our business grants could actually fund to pay for the equipment to set up the stands, right? So that the nonprofit owns the stands, but then the vendors don't have to come up with that cost, because that's just one more obstacle to implementing them coming to the market. They don't want to front money that they may not be able to get the return on. They don't have that cost because the nonprofit is going to own it. So there's a venue. The mobile slaughterhouse, it just segues into these things. We funded one of the chapters, and I'm just blanking the name on it real quick, but we actually funded a study to do a mobile slaughterhouse up in their area because they were looking at lamb and beef, which everybody's willing to do, but nobody knows how to take it to that level to get a certified project, right? But you can also do a smaller scale. We don't care. I'll fund you to do a mobile market. We just got to have a plan of who's going to open and operate it. It doesn't have to be USDA certified if it meets the stuff for the state and connecting. So these studies help kind of map this information out, and then at point, we're certainly happy to help fill in here's how to fund those gaps that you've identified to take it to the next level. It's not going to happen in 6 months, but the study could, right? Study leads into the next thing. So this is a 1 to 5 year process, but you never get on the journey unless you take that first step, Okay, so anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but that is a key element to this thing, is that you've got all the resources and the potential partnerships here. We just aren't mapping it to put it in the plan to carry it forward. I'm entirely lecturing, but so we kind of covered a lot of this area. Is there any questions about that? Or are we just toast? Everybody's just mentally tossed it out. Okay, so we have one last thing, and I can't remember what it is offhand. I'm blanking. We've done the the food banks. Food banks. Yeah, now we're getting into the good stuff right now. So okay.
So the resources and networking, what they are, where they are, who they are, was the top vote.
Yeah.
Right on its heels, but both of them way ahead of the other categories, is the capacity for production.
Which we've covered a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
got covered. So food banks was the third highest, and then there's a big gap again.
Okay. So if we take a few minutes on that, so how many food banks do we have in the region that are supported right here? Okay, we got all you individual food banks, or you all? Okay, so we have 4 different food banks. 5. Okay. So, what's your problem? What's what? I mean, no. So what? I mean, what do you? What's the issue? All right. So at least I got you laughing. There's some blood flow going to the brain now here a little bit. Quality of food.
We get our pallets of food and half of it's already rotted, so by the time we sort out and get any of the good stuff in for our seniors, it's.
Let me ask this first question. Are you all getting USDA commodities? No. USDA commodities. From, okay, where's, there she is. There she is. TVAP. Okay, sorry. Wrong acronym. Okay. I have this, I only know 4 letters. My name's Hayes is 4 letters, USDA is 4 letters, Jeff's 4 letters. It's all, anything beyond that, I get lost. So, okay, right. So, no, Hayes is Hayes, no E in there. Anyway, so we have commodities. So those are, we're not worried about that. You're talking about the produce spoilage or things like that, other donations. Okay, so that's an issue. Storage. Storage, cold storage or just storage?
Cold, for us, it's cold.
Okay.
That's what you're talking about, equipment.
Could be, or is it forklifts or? Okay. You guys are needy, pretty needy. Okay, so yes, sir.
When you speak of commodities, one of the problems that really bothers me, and I'm not trying to bemoan United Food Bank out of Mesa, but when they publicize a list of what is a nutritional food box, and I keep that in my, I don't have it with me today, but I always carry that with me. And what they say should be in a food box, we don't receive, even from the commodity standpoint, not counting the fresh produce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can't even bring us the product to put out a nutritional food box. Per there.
You're not paying them enough? No. So, I mean, so that's an obstacle. In other words, there's gaps in the commodities that you're getting. Okay.
Gaps in the information we get and what we receive.
Okay. So there's a question to bring up there. So that could be a policy or it could be a fundamental access thing. We don't know. So, okay. So we got produce. Where do you get your produce? Is it comes through United? Okay.
We get 2 trucks a month. We get them the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday.
Okay.
Our trucks come in. We get our commodities, our TFAP on the first Tuesday, and then we get produce and sometimes meat, eggs, and all that kind of stuff on the third.
Okay.
And we give it out the following Wednesday of each week, those 2 weeks.
Okay. So volume and quality is one element.
Right.
Then storage. Storage is because you just don't have enough space, or just because it's a quick turnaround, or because you got the.
We have to turn it fast because we don't have the storage.
Okay. So cold storage would be an option. How far are you guys all apart from each other? 3 miles. Okay.
One of the things that we had a problem with in that cold storage area, we used to have a 40-foot reefer. Our problem was the cost of operation was $400 a month in the electric bill. Our agency
Yeah.
could not afford it, and we could not get other food banks at that time to collaborate and help, for not only to help cover the cost of the utility, but the storage.
Okay.
It was that big, we could have stored enough in there for 2 or 3 other agencies, but they would not work together.
Okay.
It was one of those Whitlam strategies, what's in it for me?
Right. Sure.
And.
I ask that question all the time.
Yeah,
So.
reason why, in fact,
Okay. So if
that's capacity,
that
because they took it out.
that being said, you think you guys could start communicating, collaborating again today? Okay. So those are things that we brought up.
Old Concho, OCAC, Old Concho Community Assistance Center.
Okay. Okay. So I get it. And sometimes like we can fund all day long. Well, not all day long, but fund equipments and stuff like that. But it's always, we also want to make sure it's going to be sustained too. We're going to give you some, we're fund it. We want to make sure it's going to be operated. So there goes back to the next plan. So it sounds like everybody's sort of always running short of cash at the end of the month, right? Maybe we look at a regional effort to do some fundraising for that.
I'd like to add one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once we had the reefer and the promises were made to keep it full, even if we were just going to operate it on our own, that fell through too.
Okay.
We weren't there, the supply supply was not given to us like it was supposed to be.
Okay.
We were told we would feed you supply with the food, now that you have this reefer, and that never
Okay.
came through.
Okay.
TFAP quantity has gone down over the
Right.
years.
Because
Quantity
it's
has
some-
dropped.
We used to be open, we used to put boxes out once a week.
Okay.
The quantity got so small that
Okay.
people
So,
wouldn't come to get it because there wasn't
so
enough.
Makes the case that we need to be self-sufficient.
there you go. Thank you. Well, you just said a perfect thing. So it sounds like we've talked about the other things like the stuff at the prisons, resources. There's groups out there that may be doing community things that could be supplanting that, right? So that would be an action plan to look at at this meeting. So again, every one of these things is going to have an outcome. We've got to have a meeting because obviously we can't solve all that, and we want to focus on your special needs that you guys have. Your self-interest, right? We get that. So this. Turning to them to they're going to have to help put that together and organize it. But that's where these things need to be brought up. I can tell you solutions, we're here to fund capital needs and things like that. We're tickled to do that. But it's the sustainability. So there's models to do that. There's resources out there. I didn't even know till the last time there was Association of Food Banks here, right? And are they the one doing the matching grants for cold storage? Yeah.
Yes.
I think, okay, that's what I thought, yes. So that's the one I was, okay. So, but there's cases where there's some outside resources, but you're also, the state community foundations are resources too. But what you're looking for is to help find solutions that are long-term solutions, the financial sustainability, not just give me $10,000 because I'm going to run out at the end of the year, right? So we want to look at things that are going to be strategies to do that. There's resources out to do. I'm sure the foundations even pay to provide technical assistance on that to give you those models, right? So those things I think you want to look at what you're willing to do, whether it's individually or collaboration, right? Maybe one group's already got something going on that they can bring somebody else to the table to help out, share within the wealth, right? So those are models that I think you guys would need to be exercising. What other things did you guys run into? Do you have problems getting rid of it? Do you have problems distributing it? Picking it up? No? Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's
Most of it's delivered,
okay.
delivery once a month, not twice.
And then people pretty much able to come in within the community get this. So you don't have to go out and pick up food or stuff like that. Okay. Because one of the things we do is sometimes like with Flagstaff Family Food Bank, some others, they're in areas that we wouldn't fund, but they service outside, so we will fund those connectivity. I just found out with like Havasu Food Bank. They service way out in the boonies, but they immediately assumed that they couldn't fund it from us because they're in a 50,000 population. But the areas that they're other services areas are very low income population and very small. So we can certainly fund the truck to do that, right? So sometimes we have to rethink about how we're approaching the task to figure out what we're serving and who we're doing. So we got, how much, you're going to apply for what? What's the refrigerated truck or
No, it's a reefer.
the reefer, the
Well,
trailer?
yes.
Okay, refrigerated trailer.
Apply for as much as you'll let them.
I told them that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So there's a potentially maybe a first step success story to build off of, right? Okay, and then the other groups, what are the other things that you're looking for capital needs? Maybe hearing aids. No, sorry. Sir, what other things that you guys are looking for capital? I know. I'll just do. So I have a 93-year-old mother who I can hear perfectly fine. I was teaching her how to use a Google thing. That I could have put that on YouTube. It was so funny. I had me laughing. I couldn't because like, Mom, say, "Hey Google." Say the words, "Hi Google." Say, "Hi Google." No, how do you just say, "Hi Google." Say, "Hi Google." It was like it was, and anyway, it was in technology, and sometimes it's. So, anyway, what other things were you thinking of in terms of your capital needs? Do you still have the reefer? Or is that gone?
No, the reefer was full, but I still have another reefer there, a 40-foot refrigerated trailer
Okay.
that I cannot use because of the cost.
Okay. So it's the
I'm
thing.
using for a storage facility.
Okay. So operational costs. So how much do you lose every month, or do you need every month to do that?
How much do I lose?
Well, I mean, in other words, if you're running into deficit, or how much money do you need every month to keep that operational?
Minimum amount $450.
Okay, so let's say $500 a month. Okay, what do you get where do you get your money to run it now? Or run your other resources?
I'm not running it now.
Well, I mean, what are your other operational income?
Well, the rest of our operation, we have solar. We're set up on the solar system right now. In fact, they're paying us back.
Okay.
The build, our offices, our food bank is everything on solar.
Okay, good, smart move.
Thrift store.
So you have a thrift store?
The thrift store we
Okay.
have, we do fundraisers.
So, okay, so what, okay, probably gonna steal my idea, but go ahead.
Anybody familiar with like GoFundMe or Barnraiser or
Yeah.
any of those online kinds of things? Sometimes you can find a donor, one donor, who's willing to fund something like $450 a month, because it's not out of their range of funding something. Or you can find a lot of little donors at $5 and $10 a piece. But part of it is, you can't just put something up there. You have to be prepared to market what your need is.
Right.
You know, there's a term in advertising and marketing, and this is gonna sound really bad, but it's called charity porn. Does that?
For charity porn. And now you got them talking. Now all the guys are smiling here. They're all, the women are like, oh, this is.
But you make your need, so you overwhelmingly sell your need in a way that people can't
Say
turn
no.
back to it. There's a lot of, like, you see all these terrible pictures from Africa. Well, you know, most of Africa is much more developed now than what they show you, but it looks so terrible, you know, flies on kids' faces and things like that, that, you know, people respond to that. And we really, in this county, have something to market. This is the third poorest county in the United States. How many of you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's something to market.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's charity porn,
Yeah.
okay?
And that's just exactly what I say. So there's we got to think differently. So, but you have a mechanism. Maybe what is it? You know, look at the tools that you have that are maybe not being. Maybe you need more space in your thrift store. Maybe you just need more donations, and you got to market that. There's, you know, the problem is that everybody's focused day to day to keep alive and moving. Sometimes we need maybe bringing outside people. So there's a case where maybe on a collaborative effort, you bring somebody else in, like yourself or somebody else that comes in that can add value to what you're doing today and look at it from a different lens. Community foundations support that. There's a guy, I throw his name out all the time, James Lincoln. He's the business guy for some of their funds that the foundation runs. But he does some of the business technical help. That say maybe you're not smart. I mean, right? You guys got sold. That's great because you've eliminated a lot of your expenses, and you're actually getting some dividends back. But other things that maybe looking at. So that's something maybe that collaboratively you bring in some outside resources to help all of you rethink your process, because it doesn't sound like you're competing markets per se. So you have revenues, but maybe each of you could open up your one, or there's one store that benefits everybody, right? So you know that's another opportunity where collaboratively maybe you all have a thrift store. And you open it up in different places. We can fund those type of things, the equipment things. We don't do the operational side, but there's sometimes where you have to buy a building. You know, there's lots of venues to do that. It's just, do you have the energy, or do you have the resources, capacity? Yes.
So I would ask them how active your boards are. Because I think food banks have run into a little bit of trouble. You find people to serve on your board, and they show up for your monthly board meeting. It's not that they're bad people, that's not what I'm saying at all, right? But, so the people that are working on this daily, you guys are working, and your board loves what you do, but they're not actively out helping you try to solve your problems. Okay,
Right.
once a quarter, okay? And so you might wanna take a look at your board and say, okay, is there somebody that we don't have on the board that we really need? Is there somebody in the community that would really help with that? Or you might have to give your board that pep talk and say, hey, look, really?
Yeah.
You know,
Look what we're missing out on if we didn't.
dying,
Right.
We gotta have some help to
Yeah,
do that.
I mean, the other side is you don't want to also, I mean, let's be real. You also don't want to sell something you don't have. If you're going to put a cooler in there, but you don't have anything to put in it, that's really not going to gain you anything. But that may be looking at other resources to extract donations and stuff. Here's the thing, and it goes back to branding the poverty thing, right? Okay, yeah, nobody really wants to say we're the third worst in the country, right? But hey, sometimes it's best to be the worst, right? So you take that and spin it, because you also bring other people involved at a state level that probably don't even know that, right? And so you get the supervisor here and other people out there promoting and saying, listen, this is needs that we need, right? And we're willing to help ourselves, but we need this start. We need the capacity. We need the training. We're willing to do things, but we need to get ourselves over. We have a problem with supply. Maybe we need to figure out ways for you guys to access other supply networks. You're using the United Food Banks as a vehicle for that, right? We don't know, but we don't know until we don't ask, right? But we got to think outside of this thing because we've been so focused on, your own boundaries potentially. So, and I'm not trying to lecture. This is just the point. Sometimes you just got to get it out there because you do have, I call it the worst, the best of the worst, right? So why not exemplify it, change that? And that's in your marketing with you in your own communities to say, and people, there's always different perceptions of what poverty is. Sometimes you just matter to reframe it as like, this is this in your backyard. You don't necessarily want to put poster children out there, but sometimes that helps. One of the best ladies I worked with, she was a photographer, so she had kids eating corn, but it was just the image of kids kind of like golfing this thing down because they're hungry. Didn't have to say anything. It was just the image alone sold this thing through. All right, so anyway, go ahead, Mr.
Well, I'm going to tell you that there's another obstacle too. As somebody new in the community, there's a lot of people who are, they object to ideas. But you've always done it that way.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but there are ways to. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Right.
And if somebody brings you an idea and says, here's an idea, and you completely reject it but we've always done it that way, you're not going to get the kind of.
And where did that get you? The good question is, where did that get you? How are you doing at that today? You're right. It's like, that's it right there. You go. Thank you. Yeah. Right.
That's why it's important to start with specific goals, small goals that we can reach and show them.
Right.
Reach and show them. Reach and show them. As we show them, each time we're going to gain support.
Right. Well, you guys have just answered everything. That's the best way to solve that one. Right. No, I mean, that is a great summary of everything we've done here, is that this is basically working your way through that map. Okay. I mean, I really tend to say that each of these needs to meet and kind of brainstorm all these things and identify, because we can go through all this today, but we really go back and think through those needs, which opportunities, a little SWOT analysis, right? And you guys will go through that process to brainstorm ideas that we can then take a level. You've got some people like yourself, myself, other staff, people that are willing to come in and help frame those things. I love doing that with the grant stuff, right? Here's how we frame these grants out. Maybe it's the food bank, the analysis on a regional scale for, the food hub stuff. But there's technical expertise. And I was kind of hoping to actually get more in depth today, but we've had such great conversation. It really needs to be done on a concise level. But I think that would be good and for each of those products to go through. And then ask for help. Okay, we've figured this out. What is their next step? And then we can bring people in. We don't want to wait too long either, but think that through and plan for when we can take those next steps with those things and other people we can bring in. I'm sure Director Killian's absolutely willing to help on those things as well and bring resources. He's got a much more extensive network and politically people to bring in as well too. But if we don't know what to ask, we don't know how to make that ask. All right. I'm going to end without any questions, and I'm 15 minutes ahead of time. All right.
And we have to vacate anyway.
Okay, well, we're getting kicked out, so. All right. Right there, right. Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm also new to Arizona. I've been here less than a year, but I also lived about 11 years down in southwest New Mexico in a little community called Silver City, Grand County. And if they weren't one of the poorest, like Apache County, they were for a lot of the things that you're talking about here today. They're still fighting down in that area there. But one of the things that I hear, and I don't know how many meetings you have prior to today, and you're supposed to have another meeting, but and you've got a lot of wonderful people there, a lot of excellent input, and a lot of excellent organizations, but almost to a person, everybody is saying, we don't have a network, we don't have a regional committee, we don't have an ad hoc committee. I think at your next meeting, that's what you need to form.
Right.
Everybody bring in here, bring some more people in. Gail and Teresa, I think, we're talking about the Lavender and this Mike. Start to bring in some of those leaders at your next meeting, and then maybe make a commitment to start that committee right at that next meeting, and start to get people to commit get some of them to become your leaders.
Yeah.
And then from that committee, get those sub-quote committees you're talking about.
Sounds like we have an organizer right here volunteering to say. No, but that's just,
You had, I
yeah.
don't know how many times you've talked about this. Today, you've been talking about it.
Well, actually-
Next month, you might be talking about, say, we still be networking. Get it started.
You guys have made huge leaps just today, right? So, I mean, you've gone from just a general meeting that says, here's an introduction, to 3 focused ideas that pretty much addressed everybody's wants, that they came out of that meeting with pretty much, I'm seeing as a huge excitement and energy level towards addressing the networking, the food access thing. I mean, all these are gonna have baby, but if we don't have a plan, and that's what each of those groups, and then report those groups back to everybody, so everybody kind of knows what the other groups are happening too, because that's important as well. If one group's off there and we need to cross-pollinate with this stuff, even if it's on an email chains or some marketing element to that, but that goes back to the networking, right? Reporting it back to the different groups. So I think the pieces and parts are in place. Those meetings are just, all right, we identify them, set them up. Hopefully the county will take the lead in facilitating that. And then you guys maybe find some leaders that are willing to step up, maybe champion those, because you don't need me up here to do this. Things, all this stuff's come out of you, right? So, all right. Any questions or last comments?
With permission, Supervisor, and I need to do this.
Yeah.
This economic development conference that we're having, and you can find this at colorado.net. This is the 11th year we've done things. We've worked on natural resources. That's what my organization as a 501c3 does. But the point is, we are bringing people up here to talk to us on our ground. The Director of Agriculture will be up here Thursday night talking. Representative O'Halloran will be at noon on Friday. J. Albert Brown, that many of you know, is going to talk about water and resources. And although that doesn't affect you directly, those of you in Concho that have contacted me before, and trust me, I may not have gotten back with you, but I made about a dozen calls, and there's some things happening insofar as possible. He'll be up talking on Wednesday evening at our kickoff dinner. There is a cost to it. We're a nonprofit. Here's the brochures. There's a lot of people talking, networking, and finding people that are going to be the ones that you can get in that little niche that'll click with your group, is the whole point of that. We don't need those 6 million people down in Phoenix. There are only about 56,000 non-tribal members in Navajo and Apache County. And when I tell you that, I want to tell the tribal people that I work with the Civic U Apache. I'm on the board of the 14R Ranch in Sanders. I'm on the board of the Hopi Tribe Economic Development Corporation, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but the way economic development and growth happens are different in tribal and non-tribal areas. Come and find out what's going on. You can come to some or all. This will supplement everything that Supervisor Chambly, who's on my board, bless your heart, and Jeff are talking about. We need to help each other. We've got to get over the, they've done us wrong, even though they're doing it. 6 million of them down in Phoenix, and figure out how we can do things to help ourselves. Thank you for listening to me just a bit.
I'm just going to wrap up one more thing and just say is that, I presented to NAGOG, your Association of Governments here, and identified the monies that went into all the different counties, okay, and Navajo and Apache were on the lower end of those things because nobody asks, right? Or they are making that proper ask potentially. So I'm saying, kind of challenge you to today. We've got the money, we're having the willing to do it. Let's get the applications in, let's get them through the process. Because if it's not for this year, it'll be on our table for next year, right? If you don't, we work on it all the way around. The food bank thing, we're certainly happy to look at the food hub as a study. We maybe have some other entrepreneurial opportunities up as well. But what I'll try to do is, after we compile all this stuff, I will also then try to identify some additional resources. So going into this meeting, you will have some, like the extension of the people contacts, things that we can throw at you to say, here's examples of what was done, but also resources to pay for those, okay? So that you're going in with some ideas on that, so then that'll stimulate other conversations and then phone calls so we can talk about specific projects, all right? Well, thank you very much. You guys have been great to work with. Appreciate it.